Could it really be that he hasn't gone crazy? At first glance, you have no doubt that the guy really went crazy. But after understanding his story and analyzing several interviews and materials about Jim Carrey, I realized that behind all this craziness, there's something genius and extremely profound in this behavior. This way of being and acting pushes people away and diverts their attention to superficial and insignificant things. The vast majority will say that he's making a joke, that he wants attention, or that he simply went crazy. But this behavior is nothing more than the reflection of a guy who spent his whole life trying to please everyone and everything. And when he realized that this made him an empty person, disconnected from his true identity, he decided not to care about any of that anymore.
Who would I be if I said things people don't want to hear?
Clearly fed up with his superficiality, he connected with his most authentic self. And the people who weren't used to this new Jim Carrey simply accused him of being crazy, closing their minds to understanding the powerful messages he was trying to convey. All this behavior from Jim Carrey becomes even clearer when we understand a bit of his story. He had a very complicated childhood, coming from a humble family. At 12 years old, he saw his father get fired from his job, and his situation got even worse. This forced his family to live inside a van. From an early age, his talent for acting was noticeable, and especially his ability to make others laugh.
When people arrived home, they were greeted by a 7-year-old child throwing himself down the many steps of the staircase. They'd ask, "What happened?" I'd reply, "I don't know, let's watch the replay."
And
I'd return to the top of the ladder and descend in slow motion.
he quickly realized this was the way to lift his family out of poverty. So he started dedicating himself more and more to it. He began to shape himself to entertain and amuse people, and there's no way around it. The comedy industry is totally focused on other people's opinions. It's a job where your success depends completely on people's positive judgment.
I was just building something that people would like.
And that's how he grew up. He became a reflection of what society wanted and expected him to be. Clearly, this was bound to blow up eventually. That ended up happening when he was chosen to make a movie about the biography of the comedian and his personal idol, Andy Kaufman, titled Man on the Moon. On that occasion, Jim decided he would embody the character of Andy for the entire period of filming, even off camera.
I don't like it. I want to do it one more time.
It was bizarre. He wouldn't get out of character at all. He would only respond when people called him Andy, and that started to bother the people around him. And he wasn't an unknown at the time. On the contrary, he was already a very successful personality and one of the big names in Hollywood. Just so you know, he had already done Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, and The Truman Show. That was the moment in his life when I believe he really flirted with insanity, completely letting go of Jim Carrey, kind of taking advantage of his profession to escape from the person he was, and starting to live life from the perspective of another guy. It was so serious that, years later, Netflix decided to make a documentary about it, recovering behind-the-scenes footage that they kept hidden for almost 20 years.
Murcell didn't want the footage we shot behind the scenes to be released, so people wouldn't think I was a fool.
And, in the end, that episode ended up being useful for him to realize that Jim Carrey was no longer a real representation of himself, but rather just another one of his characters. The contempt and disgust he had for himself became evident every time the name Jim Carrey was mentioned, while he was, let's say, possessed by Andy Kaufman. Obviously, when filming ended, he struggled a lot to go back to living life as Jim Carrey.
I realized that if it's so easy to lose Jim Carrey, who the hell is Jim Carrey?
The film industry in general doesn't really care about that, as long as the final result isn't compromised. That's why the psychological problems and loneliness that Jim Carrey faced during much of his journey were often seen as something positive. Because they had the power to further enhance his performances, the artist's personal life is put in the background. Just so you understand, when Jim Carrey was chosen to star in the movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the actor was going through a delicate moment in his personal life where, in his own words, he was heartbroken. The director of the movie thought that was perfect for the role and even told him, please, don't get better.
So he asked me to be okay.
And that was Jim's career. His life was dedicated to others. He played a relevant social role, which required him to be a character even off camera.
Jim Carrey was a great character, and I was lucky to get that role.
Imagine what would happen if he wasn't Jim Carrey, funny and playful when someone ran into him. It was a huge frustration, a disappointment, and that's why he was constantly trying to live up to what people expected of him. A life without peace, of someone who became a clear product of society. And it's not very hard to predict what would happen. After a few years enduring this situation, he reached his limit and went through one of the most delicate moments of his career: depression.
Depression is your body saying, screw you, I don't want to be this character anymore.
He no longer knew himself, completely contaminated by the industry he worked in. He let himself be defined by others and by empty and superficial things that he kept adding to his character throughout his life. And even though he reached the top, having achieved what many consider to be success, he felt a deep emptiness inside himself, realizing that money, fame, and recognition don't make a person whole.
I always said that I wish people could achieve their dreams, wealth, and fame.
So they can see that it's not there where they'll find their sense of fulfillment.
And that's exactly when he decided to deepen his search for identity. During this period, his public appearances became increasingly rare. He wasn't making as many movies as before. And in the middle of this process, he also lost his ex-girlfriend, who was a very important person in his life. In his rare appearances, he showed that he was no longer the same Jim Carrey as before. He was no longer spewing out jokes nonstop. His focus was no longer on making everyone laugh. He started bringing his facts, his reality to the cameras.
And
people weren't ready for that. They weren't used to this new social role. That's why the natural reaction of the media and social networks was to spread it. The idea that he was lost in the midst of depression, or that he had actually gone insane. And let's be fair, at first, that's really what it seemed like.
oh my God, food!
But after analyzing it more calmly and looking beyond what that situation seemed to be, it became very clear that what he was doing was simply showing his true personality. He was someone who, for the first time, had freed himself from social constraints and managed to build a genuine character, created and guided by himself and no longer by the public. He was no longer shaped by society, but by himself. Someone who was so committed to himself that he no longer cared about the judgment and opinions of others. His craziness was nothing more than him being himself, giving his honest opinion on matters and using his talents to make deep social critiques.
I am the two-time Golden Globe winner, Jim Carrey.
When I go to bed at night, I won't just be an ordinary guy. I am the two-time Golden Globe winner, Jim Carrey, getting some well-deserved shut-eye. And when I dream, I don't just dream any old dream.
I'll dream of being the three-time Golden Globe winner. Actor Jim Carrey.
In that speech, he clearly mocked the superficiality and emptiness of those who only seek awards or material possessions in life. In a world of appearances and deception, Jim Carrey just wants to be close to the truth. And authenticity is a great way to do that. That way, Jim ends up choosing the people who are worth having around. And he distances himself from everyone who can't see beyond the superficial, who are completely trapped in a world of appearances. And because of that, they won't even bother to try to understand.
Everywhere I go, people only talk about my beard, always asking why I'm growing it and seeming unable to focus on anything else.
His latest interviews show this very well. He avoids irrelevant questions and uses them to leave deep messages that most people won't even understand. And they'll say he's crazy, but at this point, he doesn't even care about that anymore. He is free from being a victim of other people's judgment. This partly stems from his ego renunciation.
No matter what you do, the ego won't let you rest. We are trying to add things to ourselves so that we can define ourselves for other people to look at and think, okay, so that's who you are.
But if you get there, you'll see that it's so empty. You'll realize it's not worth it.
He needed to get rid of that image and that character he carried with him. He needed to get rid of all the labels that made him a hostage to his profession. Notice in this interview how he completely ignores others' opinions of him. While the reporter is completely shocked.
Wait, tell me, is it true that you need a date for this party?
No, I'm fine. I wanted to come to the most pointless event possible. And here I am.
They say they're celebrating icons in there?
Do you believe in icons? This is definitely the emptiest and most meaningless event they could have come up with.
Don't you believe that icons have the power to bring about change and to influence and motivate people? You're one of them.
With good intentions? Ha! Yes! Turn him off now!
If you watch this interview without all this context, you would definitely say he's crazy. The woman even seems normal, but while he is connected with himself, she is worried about her role in society, desperate to be understood and accepted. Look at how she looks at the camera, like someone who looks at the audience and says, I don't belong here. I'm like you, I'm not crazy like him. And on some level, we're all like that. Jim Carrey himself used to be like that too. Constantly worried about what others will think, and that ends up disconnecting us from ourselves and from what we're experiencing. Don't get me wrong, I'm not here to say, just be yourself and to hell with everyone else. After all, we all have social roles, that's obvious. We live in a society, there's no way around it. What I mean is that I see Jim Carrey's story as a warning. It's the story of someone who got to where he always dreamed. But to do that, he gave up who he really was. Someone who sacrificed everything, lost sight of himself chasing a dream, and no longer recognized who he was when he achieved it. And because of that, he went through what must have been the hardest period of his life. But it was also a period of rebuilding, a moment to look inside and try to reconnect with his essence. That's something he managed to do. It's noticeable. He left behind the disoriented man who let himself be carried away by what was outside of him to become a conscious man, a mature man who took control of his own life.
That's something you might never hear another celebrity say. As long as time exists, I have enough. I have done enough. I am enough.
The key word in this process is awareness. It's about you forgetting all the labels, ideologies, professions, and everything that comes from outside to define you. Because that limits your possibilities and keeps you stuck in empty paths, disconnected from your essence.
I believe that we are a field of energy dancing alone.
Jim Carrey is not crazy.
No, sir.
He is just someone who needed intense experiences to connect with life in its purest state, and who uses his genius and relevance to spread essential messages. This whole situation makes me think, what does it really mean to be crazy? It's being someone true to yourself, but strange to society, or someone who gives up their essence to be accepted by others.